Employees who were fired because they were too religious have now received a settlement. I'm Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Deryl Edwards, president of Liberty Counsel Action. Deryl, this is a case that we've talked about on Faith and Freedom for some time, and it's involving the Dixons, husband and wife. And Daniel and Sharon Dixon were actually fired from their job and evicted from the property management position for having a piece of artwork that was hanging in their office that contained a scripture reference. And the scripture reference was consider the lilies. And it was from the Gospel of Matthew. And it was a stained glass picture of flowers and lilies, and it just had that particular scripture verse. It wasn't very prominent. It was actually small at the very bottom, consider the lilies. And over that particular issue, they were fired, and they were also told that they were too religious. They were property managers for Hallmark Companies, Hallmark Management Company, which is to be distinguished from the Hallmark greeting card company. It's not the same. But Hallmark Management Company owned different properties, and the Dixons were actually the property managers, and they lived in that particular complex. So when they were fired, they also lost their home at the same time.
Well, this is the case where, once again, we have this overreaching by not just from government, but that is caused, I think, from government and the liberalism that has crept in. And the fact also, I think, Christians are not standing up for their rights, which are more than they probably think they are. And you've proven that over the years at Liberty Counsel, where the majority of the cases, if you just show up and you just fight, you will win them because the Constitution still protects them.
That's right. In fact, this case, Daniel and Sharon, they were employees as well as tenants in a government-subsidized facility called Thornwood Terrace Apartments. It's in Lake City, Florida, down in the Central Florida area. Now, they had been there for a while, and this picture, this painting, or this stained glass had also been there for a while. But they got a new manager. They got a new person that came into the facility, a new person that was going around from one property to the other. And this individual, this new regional manager, came in and asked Sharon if the words on the artwork referred to Scripture. She didn't even know. I mean, it says, consider the lilies, and it has the Scripture verse. It doesn't say anything else. Does that refer to Scripture? So she was ignorant about Scripture, obviously. Does that refer to Scripture? When Sharon said, yes, it does, the manager demanded that she take it down. And then when Sharon went to go get her husband, Daniel, to come back and talk to this regional manager, the manager had already taken down this stained glass and said, you're too religious, and fired them both on the spot, gave them 72 hours to vacate the apartment. So they lost their job, and they had 72 hours to move out of the apartment. So they lost their home at the same time. We filed a federal lawsuit on their behalf, charging that the Hallmark Management Company engaged in religious discrimination. We ultimately took this case to the federal court, all the way up to the Federal Court of Appeals. The Federal Court of Appeals reversed the district court, sent it back down, so that we were able to now proceed to trial because the district court had sided with the Hallmark Management Company. The Federal Court of Appeals sided with us. We went back down to the trial, and as we're moving towards the trial, they decided to ultimately settle this case. So the Dixons are very happy. This is a situation where the Hallmark Management Company engaged. They crossed the line, and they did what they shouldn't have done. And how can you be fired for being too religious? These were people who were not proselytizing. They were not interfering with other people. They were doing their job, but they're Christians, and they were fired simply for being Christian.
And you have to wonder, you see so much it's in terms of Christians and biblical phrases. Had there been a quote from the Quran, had there been a statement from, Buddha, Confucius, would anybody have said anything? Their religions as well, but it seems like it's always Christianity that's singled out.
Yeah, and if you look at this, you can go to our website at lc.org, and there's a press release. And on the press release, we actually embedded in the press release a picture of the stained glass. And it's fairly innocuous. It's a stained glass with flowers, and at the bottom of the stained glass, you almost have to look very closely. It says, consider the lilies. It doesn't say anything else. It just says, consider the lilies, and then the scripture
And I'm not sure how many
verse.
people would actually know if they had just seen it in a store somewhere that was a passage from the Bible.
Well, in fact, the regional manager wasn't quite sure it was a passage from the Bible.
That's right.
Anybody who's familiar with the Bible would know that, consider the lilies of the valley. God cares for them. He's going to care for you. So you would have to know the rest of the Scripture to know what this is about. It doesn't even give the entire Scripture. And in fact, because of that, they were ultimately terminated. This is just an overreaching of this regional manager, and hopefully the regional manager has now, and the Hallmark management companies have learned their lesson.
And I think you have to continually be vigilant. We've talked recently about how we hit this peak a few years ago at Christmas where people couldn't say Merry Christmas and the stores were crunching. And that's kind of backed off a little bit. They've changed, and you hear that more than you used to after 2 or 3 years of really hard fighting and standing up for that.
Yeah, that's right. It got really crazy with the Christmas, and certainly every year now we have our Friend or Foe Christmas campaign to make sure that we can continue to advance and not lose ground that we've gained. But yeah, you're right. A few years ago, back in 2005, it's a whole different ballgame than it is in 2012 or 2011, the Christmas that we just came through. Back then, really absurd things were taking place. Red and green were banned. You couldn't greet each other with greetings such as Merry Christmas. Christmas trees, you couldn't find them. They were called holiday trees because of the word Christmas. A lot of that has changed because we took an aggressive position, and ultimately people around the country began to express their opinions with regards to the retailers. The same is true here. This is a situation that never should have happened. Daniel and Sharon could still be working at Hallmark Management Company. There was no problem. Nobody complained. It's not like customers or people who were tenants complained to the management to say, I don't like that scripture verse there. No one said a single word. The previous regional manager, no problem. But the new regional manager comes in sort of on a search and destroy mission, apparently, doesn't like the fact that this is the scripture when she finds out it is a scripture, and then takes this unbelievable action to fire them and to evict them at the same time.
And this is the first I've heard on such a minor issue in an area like this, in a commercial area. We've seen cases where school children may have drawn a picture of Jesus on a Christmas card and hung it up, and then you have this governmental thing. But in the private sector, what would it matter?
Well, some of these people, it's a government-subsidized facility, so it's for low-income government subsidy. And some people, they just have
Is that a fear?
I think to some extent it was, but I'm not sure that they actually mentioned that as the reason. I think they had more of an anti-Christian perspective, and that's why they did that. But in some government-subsidized facilities, like for the senior living centers, we see this at Christmas time. People have the mistaken idea that if it's government-subsidized, therefore you can't allow the individual tenants or the seniors in a facility to actually have any kind of decorations or statements about Christianity or decorate a Christmas tree with an angel or things of that nature. Of course, that's completely not true. And here what happens is there's federal laws that govern this, both for employment as well as for public accommodations. In either, whether it's employment or public accommodations, you can't discriminate on the count of or on the basis of religion. So you can't just simply terminate somebody because they're, quote, too religious. And in this particular case, other than that painting or that stained glass and the fact that they said that they're too religious, they have nothing else to show. They don't have any other things to say, well, they're going out trying to convert, they're offending people because they're constantly pursuing their religion and pushing it on other people. None of that information was ever even suggested. They just didn't like them because they were Christians.
Boy, it just goes to prove that if you don't stand up and defend your rights, you will lose them. The circle will get ever tighter around you until you lose everything.
That's why Liberty Counsel is here, to not only educate but to litigate if necessary, to make sure that our constitutional liberties, our religious freedom, sanctity of life, and the family is protected. Go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information. We have both. We have a lot of resources. We have the Patriot's Handbook on Religious on American Liberty, and that is a handbook that has the Constitution, the Declaration, and other documents, including Patrick Henry's Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death speech. We also have the book Take Back America. You can order that, as others as well, David Barton's book, Original Intent, and many other resources that are there on the website. Go to Liberty Counsel's website also to find other educational information that you can download or you can call to ask for. That number is 1-800-671-1776. We ask that you not only pray for the ministry, but also remember us in your financial giving. And also sign up for the Awakening 2012. Go to lc.org, coming up April 20 and 21.